Grande Vitesse, The Great Swiftness, by John Richter. They put him in the room sometimes, the room that was round but not a circle. It was more like the shape of an egg or a basketball court. It was nice to sit in the quiet dark. Bright lights made him anxious, and so before they left, they dimmed the lights and allowed him to sit in the leather high-backed chair which stood behind the solid wooden desk. The room calmed him, as it had been a place that he had always wanted to be, though it was sometimes hard to remember why. But if he strained his eyes against the dark, he could make out the faces of the men on the wall. The men had stern faces, but not unpleasant faces, and he could remember that these were the faces of men who had been in the room before him, and that this was the place where they had also wanted to be. Although it wasn't a place where one was happy or sad once they got there, even if they had wanted to be in that room their entire lives, it was a place where one sat and contemplated the necessity of being. His eyes slid away from the wall like egg yolks from a whisk, and the faces of the good men who watched over him from the walls of the Oval Office vanished from his mind as he eyed the small glass of whiskey that the bastard had laid on the desk after the rest had gone away. Languedoc, he whispered to himself. That probably wasn't a real word, but it was the word which sprang to mind when the man that had brought the whiskey placed his hand on his shoulder and rested there for a long moment. The hand had been white, crisscrossed with withered veins, and had shook very slightly as he had laid the glass on the desk. The man had then bent forward and placed his lips close to his ear, so close that he could feel the warmth of the man's breath against his face, and smell the not unpleasant sour moldering of it, as he said something unintelligible about the passing of time, and Joe could tell that he was sad. The man then stepped back and smiled, revealing teeth which had grown old in various states of misalignment, and been steeped in coffee and cigarette smoke. Joe reached for the glass. His grip was firm, and he squeezed the cool surface with a large hand as he lifted the glass and swigged its contents in one throaty gulp. The liquid poured down his throat like fire, until the warmth quenched the deep ache in his stomach and seemed to give him weight, as though it were concrete that had settled wetly into his bones. They didn't think you'd still be alive, you know. The voice emerged from the dark and was soft and strong like a rush of callow wind in the early spring. Joe didn't know what to think of that, and so said nothing. The boy was another reason why he liked the room, because that was where the boy visited him. Sometimes the boy did tricks, or would show him things, but sometimes he was angry. Those motherfuckers thought that you would be dead by now, and they want you dead. They want you fucking gone. Where do they want me to go? Asked Joe as diplomatically as possible, not wanting to upset the boy any further. Where do they want you to go? The boy repeated. Where do they want you to go? He asked again, this time increasing the pitch of his voice, but not the volume. That's the problem with motherfuckers, you see, said the boy in his best impersonation of Bill Cosby as he stepped from the shadows. They always be motherfucking. The boy was tall and slender, his eyes obscured by a voluminous shock of hair that was likely brown during the winter but was now bleached golden by the sun. Joe let out one note of a sharply braying laugh before abruptly cutting himself off. If anyone came in, the boy would leave, and he would be alone again. That wasn't funny, the boy spat. Why do you think they call you the Glass Man, anyway? Who calls me the Glass Man? Joe wondered as he was beginning to lose the thread of the conversation. The suits, the boy shrieked in his whispered mania. The men with the walkie-talkies and sunglasses, they watch your every move. Every time you go to take a shit, they say into their radios, Glass Man moving out. And those were the whoresons that killed Kennedy. Bam! The boy slapped his hands together in a banal reenactment. His ass got shot right in the fucking head, and his brains splattered all over his wife's face like a load of cum. The boy then turned to the wall and braced himself against it, as though exhausted by the outburst. Neither spoke for several minutes, each resting with their thoughts in the darkness that was not sleep. Why do they call me the Glass Man? Joe asked again, attempting to rekindle the warmth of conversation from its embers. The boy turned from the wall, walked to the desk, placed his hands on it, and slowly lowered himself until they were at eye level. They thought you would be dead by now because you're sick, but they didn't take into account how strong you were. What about the summer you ran every morning down to the pier and did push-ups to get ready for football? I don't remember that, said Joe with a wilted smile. You don't have to remember, said the boy defiantly. All you have to do is look at me. And Joe did. He stared at the boy until he could smell the salty wind that had washed over the pier, see the sweat that had glistened on his light brown skin, and feel the rough surface of the wooden planks against his chest as he had primed his body up and down in rhythm with the cadence of youth. Joe sat back in a daze, his head drifting lazily against the headrest of the chair. Good, said the boy, as he straightened up. He paused for a moment and then wrinkled his nose. You had better call someone, he stated, through a nasal cavity congested with disdain. It smells like you just shit yourself.